Oh my God, I just recorded a whole podcast and my little record button shut off after 2 minutes. Don't you just hate when that happens? And it was such a good podcast. I always tell people I've had this happen often on my phone with Zoom or something, and I may be going off and I'm just like talking away, and then all of a sudden I realize everybody's frozen. Have you ever had that happen? Or on a phone call, I don't hear anybody for a little bit, and I'm like, are you there?" I was like, "Oh, man, I had my best stuff going." Well, that's what happens often in parenting. We have our best stuff happening up in our heads, and believe it or not, our children sometimes are not interested in hearing about our heads. Yes, it is true. We have a division inside, often in parenting, between our heads and our hearts. In our culture, we have a very strong energy toward intelligence. We love our minds. Good behavior is the gold standard in our culture. Often, when we move into the heart, we feel vulnerable and weak. So it's like, oh no, let's not like stay in our hearts so much. Let's get back up into our heads and our minds. Now, what the problem is with this is that the mind is always looking into the future, and that's kind of its job. It's not our wisdom being, it's our future. It's seeing things in the pathway going forward. So it's parenting always from, okay, if I do this, and if I let you do this, and if I don't let you do this, then you'll end up in the future being a certain way. So it's very future oriented where children live very, very much in the present moment. Now, the heart is much more that present moment communicator or connector. For me, I've always noticed that the heart is not really in time and space. It's not thinking about so much about the future, right? You think about when you fell in love with your spouse or your partner, and when you're in your heart, it's like, oh man, time and space just go away. I mean, you can hang out with someone for 24 hours, right? And your mind doesn't come in there and say, you need to get some sleep because the heart feels so deeply. So in our parenting, what I found in mine was a division. I was really divided between my head and my heart because my heart had felt a lot of pain as a child. And I had learned very early that it was much smarter to be in my head, to figure out the terrain, to figure out what was going to happen in my world so I could go into the future because the heart felt extremely vulnerable. And part of my strategy as a child was to protect the heart. Now, of course, most of us get into parenting from our heart space. Most of us long to have children. That's a heart longing. Our minds get involved, and it's not such a smart idea, right? When I was adopting my daughter at 44, my heart longing was so strong, but my mind was telling me I didn't have the money, I didn't have the time, I was single, I needed to get everything together before I went. And yet my heart, the longing was so intense and so strong that it like pulled me a little bit by the nose and took me to China. And this is really, really challenging for us in our parenting because often that heart sits down in that moment. It sits down in the longing. It sits down in that connection. And then the mind will come in and say, oh, I'm being too permissive, or I can't let them do this, or they're going to turn out like that. And our culture um, supports that, right? When we're parenting from our heart, it's going to look very, very different. And again, I'm not saying split off. It's not just the heart, but when we bring our heart and make that a primary driver of our parenting is going to look very, very different. And the world will often judge that. That's my experience. The world is judging like the heart parenting, like, what are you doing? I mean, you got to teach this kid manners, and you got to teach them how to be, and you got to teach them how to be responsible, and you got to teach them this. Well, all of that, in my experience, comes when you parent from the heart, especially when you parent yourself from the heart and you turn back in, returning to your wisdom, returning to a deeper, deeper knowing that is not so much, as I say, in time and space. When I'm in my heart space, and you may have this experience also, again, that time and space falls away. And those are the places that we want to enter more and more with ourselves and with our children, and then bring that energy of the heart. That wisdom can enter the mind. Then the mind is not going to find the wisdom. The mind can support the wisdom of the heart. So this week, take some time with your heart. Ask yourself each time you want to push or pull or force your children or have an agenda, just ask yourself, what would my heart do? What would my heart say? How would my heart enter my child's world? How would my heart see my child's tantrum or my child not listening? What would be the view of my heart? Thank you for listening to this episode of Parenting Paused. If you enjoyed the episode, do me a favor and share it with your mama friends. You can also leave a review wherever you listen, which will support getting the Pure Joy message out. Come on over to the Pure Joy Parenting Practice Facebook page or join me on Instagram to hear more. And don't forget to download your free copy of the Safe Seat course on the Pure Joy website. And while there, check out the offerings page to go deeper in the Pure Joy work.